complexity, climate change. I will be interviewing Elvis Ganond. For the duration of this interview, I will be getting his take on what he feels is the reasoning global warming is occurring, his take on NASA's involved studies, the political standpoint, and what he feels could be the answer to ending it. In the past 650,000 years, NASA reports that there has been 7 cycles of advancement in glacial change and retreat. Due to this, an estimated 7,000 years ago marked the end of the last ice age and engraving the beginning of human civilization's modern climate era. The climate on Earth has consistently undergone change to ensure the balance remains sustainable for humanity to survive and continue to prosper. Let's discuss the changes that the orbital patterns of Earth itself has attributed to the change in amount of solar energy that our planet receives. Global temperatures rise, warming oceans, and shrinking ice sheets. These are just some of the reasons that scientists and NASA, the most prestigious organization that we have, that solely studies the sciences related to our solar system and beyond and human livelihood, believe are causing global warming, but more importantly, are incurring effects due to human existence and acts. What is your take on this? Elvis. I agree with the effects of global warming. We are overpopulating a planet, even though most of it is becoming harder for the planet to, let's say, filter the air through the planet, mainly because of what is happening as far as pollution. So the warming of the planet is not due to the sun, but from the pollution. Besides the fact of why it's happening, I don't think global warming has much to do with the heat of the sun, but more of the pollution occurring. The planet itself is as healthy as it could be, but I could put blame on 70 to 80% of human activity. In between the years of 1950 to 1960, scientists viewed global warming as a topic with many unanswered questions versus an actual issue that had anything to do with government policies or issues. It wasn't until American theoretical physicist Edward Teller advised a group of scientists in the year 1957 that the increasing CO2 levels could melt the polar ice caps. The government at this point paid little to no mind to this due to many companies, such as Shell International Chemical Company, had one of their scientists speak out publicly, denying that their company would have any negative effects on CO2 levels. Do you think that the governments completely understood the effects this was going to have on the years to come? Or do you think that the government knew and understood, but only focused on the milestones that were being reached, such as the first man landing on the moon, which went under speculation of being false? Elvis. I truthfully believe they knew. The government is a well-organized and intelligent force. So for them to not dissect what they are getting themselves into is false. They definitely knew and even possibly underestimated. It's more of them us underestimating the effects. Whatever damage they thought it would cause, they most likely underestimated the exact amount. The lack of knowledge wasn't the problem. It was the results they weren't expecting. Now, of course, there are groups and panels that have put more funding into the research of global warming, but majority of society also feels as if the government is not being completely open with the information that they are being provided. Many believe NASA is known for covering up information or falsifying what is known, even threatening their own people to not release information. Do you believe their credibility is lost, or is the releasing of information that is said to affect humanity 20, 30 years down the line not something that should be released to cause uproar amongst society? Elvis. NASA and the government go hand in hand. They are each other. Any top leading organization created from people that are in high position are the same. They are falsifying and misleading. They are telling their own mistakes on purpose, one way or another. Granted, not everything is perfect, and it could very well be a mistake, but even for that mistake, they have their own answers, meaning backups for their solutions. If they are letting certain news out at certain timing, when some news is being released, it's news that's new to the public, but it's old for the organization providing it, as they are already halfway to a solution, if not already having one. They have time on their hands. When they manipulate news, it manipulates time. When giving news on issues that are going on or going to affect anything or anyone in, let's say, 10 years from now, they've already come up with a solution. Personally, I think that the government is who funded NASA in the first place. The things they had to build NASA from the ground up are from findings of authorities, scientists, and anyone who's already under the umbrella of the government. So NASA is funded by the government to try and put an answer to the findings or to try and make it seem as if it doesn't exist. For example, a spaceship shows up and then we find out that they have technology that is used to grow NASA. The government and NASA are a team. They have solutions for their so-called problems. For instance, I wouldn't put 4 tires on a car if I didn't know that there was a way to replace a tire if it were to go flat. They only separate themselves from the government in public so that when the government is failing, NASA is not failing with it, and vice versa. When it comes down to it, many believe the government gives just enough funding and attention to global warming to keep society at bay, but yet are not releasing enough information for a cause, even though there is definitely research being done that proves humanity's treatment of fossil fuels, pollution, and greenhouse effects are the reasoning this is coming tenfold, as it was predicted to do so back in the 1950s. Do you feel they withheld information that could reverse or correct global warming on a global wide scale? Elvis, I think that they already have those answers because they would have never put certain things in the environment if they didn't know the effects and the answers. For instance, the second they put out fossil fuels, they already had answers to what could potentially go wrong with it. Overall, they would have never put themselves in a situation where they could potentially be killed off as well. When we speak of humanity, they aren't a separate entity. They are we are all. Personally, the only thing they don't have in their hand is the fact that nature is not on their side. Nature is at its own force, and it's a force that's hard to understand. We may be advanced in technology, but nowhere near planetary understandings. If anything, we have scratched the surface of understanding. If we did know all there was to, we would have already created our own planet able to carry life. Do you have any final thoughts on global warming, NASA government, future life of humans? Elvis. The results of what's going on is not lack of information. To be honest, the government has done everything that's right when it comes to their organization. If anything, from day one, society has been ignorant. It's the fact that we should want to get our own information. We need to be researching for our own information, caring for our own well-being. Just as attentive as our government, we should have been that as well. We are waiting for the government to be that for us. We wait for them to look out for our own interests. The only persons we should be looking out for us is us. The second we decided to drive a car, didn't we think, isn't this hurting our home, our planet? If we lack information, the next person knows it. We need to be as one, just as we live as one in one planet. We should be cautious of ourselves, our actions, and our way of life. For example, did we ever need automobiles? Like horses weren't good enough? Again, what about our home, our planet? We should live and always live within the means of what our environment had to offer. Whatever our environment had to offer, it was a means to safely and naturally survive without doing damage. This planet gave back when it comes to natural land, ways of traveling, etc. The planet gave us all of its resources to live within it in a natural and safe environment. With everything that's happening, it's because we decided to use the resources the government gave us, and majority of them are unnatural and damaging. The Indians are one of the only humans that live amongst their natural resources, contrary to us, whom live amongst technology, which are unnatural resources that are doing some damage to our livelihood. We are high maintenance and for no good reason. With our own lives, we feel the need to have the most advanced sources, but really our greed and our laziness is what solely cause the issues we face as a unit. With the weather the way it is now, it's the planet trying to refilter itself and on a global scale. It is trying to produce natural resources as a more dominant fixture than man-made resources. My position on global warming. I believe that it could potentially go both ways. The government can hide the information that is given by scientists and NASA from the public, but they cannot ignore it when all of the predictions and proven research come to fruition. The government wants to be able to control everything that occurs within its respective countries. However, they are not able to, at this point, change the effects that are occurring now to date. The planet temperature has risen 1.62 degrees since late 1990s, with most of the warming taking place within the last 35 years. Record-breaking temperatures were recorded within the years 2010 to date, and the highest on record being 2016 in between January and September, excluding June. The country's recent polar vortex in 2019 is nothing short of one of the effects that are occurring because of global warming. I don't believe that humans and human nature are the sole cause of global warming. We are, in a sense, forced to utilize the different utilities provided, since were at one point the only utilities provided, the main one being electricity. According to RGS Energy, solar energy is the newest discovery that is said to create no waste or emission of harmful gases such as water vapor, H2O, methane, CH4, nitrous oxide, N2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2, into the atmosphere. Fossil fuels are said to emit unclean, non-renewable energy into our air. They need to be burned in order for electricity to be generated for use. When burned, there are unwanted byproducts that create water and air pollution, and greenhouse gases are then released into the atmosphere, over time breaking down the ozone layer, which is what protects us from dangerous and harmful solar winds. Lastly, because fossil fuels are not infinite, they are looked at to have an uncertainty which leads to labor strikes, price hikes, and war amongst countries. If on the off chance we come to a time where we need to exit this planet we currently inhabit, there hasn't been enough research done on other planets to ensure 100% that we would be able to inhabit there safely. Research has just begun on inhabiting Mars, and not only that, but it would need to be looked further into to determine how much of the population would be able to leave and safely make the trip, how long it would take to make many trips to get as many people there as possible. The population on Earth is at a max, in a sense, and if Earth, which is bigger than Mars, can barely inhibit the amount of people living there, how would Mars?